Two teenage best friends set out for a graduation celebration hike deep into Colorado's unforgiving San Juan mountains. But within 48 hours, Emma Martinez and Kayla Thompson had vanished without a single trace, leaving behind only an eerily undisturbed campsite that defied every logical explanation. For 5 excruciating years, their families endured the largest search operation in Colorado history, spending over $2 million, yet found absolutely nothing, leaving 2 families with nothing but questions that had no answers. Then, on a routine wildlife survey mission in July 2023, a research drone equipped with thermal imaging technology detected something that defied belief and would finally crack the case wide open. The GPS tracking app was supposed to be the compromise between teenage independence and parental peace of mind. For Carlos Martinez, it was the only reason he had agreed to let his 17-year-old daughter, Emma, embark on this graduation celebration hike with her best friend, Kayla Thompson, into the remote wilderness of Colorado's San Juan mountains. It was Sunday evening, June 12, 2018. The girls had been due back that afternoon. Carlos sat in his Denver restaurant kitchen, the dinner rush finally winding down, checking his phone for what felt like the 100th time. Emma had promised to text when they reached their car at the trailhead parking lot. She was methodical that way, the kind of daughter who color-coded her school planners and never missed a deadline. But 6 p.m. had come and gone with no word. Outside, a late spring thunderstorm was building over the Rockies, dark clouds rolling in from the west like a warning. The kind of storm that could dump snow on the 14,000-foot peaks even in June, turning a beautiful hiking trip into a life-threatening ordeal in minutes. Carlos felt that familiar knot forming in his stomach, the same one he'd carried through every one of Emma's hiking adventures since she'd started exploring these mountains at 12 years old. He pulled up the GPS tracking app on his phone, the one Emma had reluctantly agreed to carry after weeks of negotiation between them and the Thompson family. The last ping showed their location at the planned campsite from the night before, a small dot on the digital map that hadn't moved for over 18 hours. No movement, no emergency signal activated. Just silence from the wilderness. Meanwhile, 15 miles across Denver, Mike Thompson was pacing his living room, his firefighter instincts screaming that something was wrong. In the 5 years since his wife's death, communication with Kayla had become sacred between them. She always called when she said she would. Always. The fact that both girls had gone silent simultaneously sent chills down his spine. That had nothing to do with the approaching storm. The 2 men had bonded over their daughter's friendship. 2 single parents navigating the challenges of raising teenage girls in a world that seemed to grow more dangerous every day. They'd agreed on the safety protocols together. GPS trackers, scheduled check-ins, detailed route plans filed with park rangers. Everything had been done right. So why was his phone silent? Mike grabbed his truck keys and headed for the door. Carlos Martinez would get the same call he was about to make, and then they'd drive to the mountains together, the way they'd planned if this day ever came. But neither man could imagine what they were about to discover, or how 5 years would pass before they learned the truth about what happened to their daughters in the San Juan wilderness. If you're already hooked on this incredible mystery, hit that like button, because what happens next will challenge everything we think we know about survival in the wilderness. Emma Martinez had always been the planner. At 17, she was valedictorian of her graduating class, early admission to Colorado State University for environmental science, and the kind of teenager who researched hiking trails with the thoroughness of a doctoral thesis. Her bedroom walls were covered with topographical maps marked with different colored pins for completed hikes, planned adventures, and dream destinations she hoped to reach before college. She was the daughter of Carlos and Maria Martinez, Mexican immigrants who had built a successful restaurant business in Denver through decades of 18-hour days and unwavering determination. Emma had inherited their work ethic and their respect for preparation. When she planned a hiking trip, she studied weather patterns, researched permit requirements, and packed emergency supplies for scenarios that would never occur to most teenagers. Emma's passion for wilderness photography had started as a Girl Scout project and evolved into something approaching obsession. Her camera never left her backpack, and her Instagram account was a carefully curated gallery of Colorado's most stunning landscapes. She dreamed of combining her environmental science degree with her photography skills, maybe working for National Geographic or the Park Service, documenting the impact of climate change on high-altitude ecosystems. But photography was just one part of who Emma was. She'd earned her Girl Scout Gold Award by developing a wilderness education program for younger scouts, teaching them navigation, weather reading, and emergency protocols. At 17, she could read topographical maps like novels, identify edible plants, and had completed wilderness first aid training. Her parents had learned to trust her judgment in the mountains because she'd never given them reason not to. Kayla Thompson was Emma's perfect counterbalance. Where Emma was methodical, Kayla was instinctive. Where Emma planned, Kayla adapted. At 17, she was the star of her high school cross-country team, holder of 3 school records, and had earned a full athletic scholarship to the University of Colorado. Her lean runner's build and seemingly endless endurance had carried her through some of Colorado's most challenging trails, often pulling Emma along when the academic perfectionist would have stopped to consult maps and elevation charts. Kayla's strength came from tragedy. Her mother had died of cancer when she was 10, leaving her to be raised by Mike Thompson, a Denver Fire Department captain who had channeled his grief into making sure his daughter could handle anything life threw at her. Mike had taught Kayla basic first aid, weather reading, and the kind of emergency protocols that had saved lives in his 20 years of emergency response. Father and daughter had developed an unbreakable bond forged through shared loss and mutual respect. Mike never worried about Kayla's physical abilities in the mountains. His daughter could run 15 miles without stopping, had the balance of a mountain goat, and the kind of determination that came from learning early that life wasn't fair, but you had to keep moving forward anyway. She was the kind of person who would carry an injured stranger out of the wilderness on her back if necessary. The friendship between Emma and Kayla had started in middle school geography class and had been cemented by their shared love of Colorado's wilderness. They balanced each other perfectly. Emma's careful planning kept them safe and on schedule. Kayla's athletic ability and competitive drive pushed them to attempt more challenging trails and longer distances. Together, they had completed some of the state's most demanding day hikes and multi-day backpacking trips. This graduation celebration hike had been planned for months. They'd chosen a 3-day loop through the San Juan Mountains, following a section of the Continental Divide Trail that would take them above treeline for spectacular views of 14,000-foot peaks. The route was challenging, but well within their abilities, a fitting way to celebrate their graduation and their acceptance to universities that would keep them close enough to continue their adventures together. The planning had been meticulous, the way both families had come to expect. Emma had obtained wilderness permits, studied weather forecasts, and created detailed day-by-day itineraries with GPS waypoints and estimated travel times. Kayla had handled the physical preparation, training runs with weighted packs, and fitness assessments to ensure they were ready for 3 days at high altitude. Both families had been nervous about the trip, not because they didn't trust their daughter's abilities, but because the San Juan Mountains were notoriously unpredictable. Weather could change from clear skies to life-threatening storms in minutes. The high altitude could cause problems, even for experienced hikers. And the remoteness of the area meant that help, if needed, could be hours or even days away. The compromise had been technology. GPS trackers that would ping their location every hour. Satellite communication devices for emergencies. Detailed route plans filed with park rangers. Scheduled check-ins with family. Everything possible had been done to ensure their safety while still allowing them the independence they'd earned through years of responsible behavior. The night before departure, both families had gathered at the Thompson house for a final safety briefing and equipment check. The girls' backpacks were packed with 3 days of food, water filtration systems, emergency shelters, first aid supplies, and backup communication devices. Their route was plotted on maps, with alternative bailout options marked in case of weather or injury. Emma's final Instagram post showed both girls with their parents at the trailhead, wearing matching graduation caps with their hiking gear. "Adventure awaits." The caption read, "See you in 3 days." The smiles on their faces radiated excitement and confidence. They looked like exactly what they were: two intelligent, prepared, experienced young women embarking on a celebration of their accomplishments and their friendship. Mike Thompson's last words to his daughter were the same ones he'd said before every hiking trip since she was 12. "Be smart, be safe, and call me when you get home." Emma's parents had hugged her tight and reminded her to take lots of pictures. Neither family could have imagined that it would be 5 years before they learned what happened after that photo was taken. June 10th, 2018. Dawn clear and crisp at the Needles Trailhead. Elevation 8,200 feet. Emma and Kayla were on the trail by 7 a.m., their matching blue backpacks loaded with everything they needed for 3 days in the wilderness. The first GPS ping came at 7:30, showing steady progress up the Continental Divide Trail toward their planned lunch stop at Chicago Basin. Emma's Instagram stories documented perfect hiking conditions: brilliant blue skies, distant snow-capped peaks, and wildflowers blooming along the trail. Her 12:30 p.m. check-in call to her father was cheerful and routine. "Dad, this place is unbelievable," she said, her voice slightly breathless from the altitude. "Weather's perfect. We're making great time. Kayla says hi and wants you to know she's keeping me from taking too many photos." The GPS tracker showed they'd reached their planned lunch spot right on schedule. At 2:15 p.m., they resumed hiking toward their first night's campsite at Twin Lakes, a pristine alpine lake surrounded by towering peaks. The tracker showed steady progress through the afternoon, with the girls maintaining their planned pace despite the thin air above 10,000 feet. At 4:15 p.m., Emma sent her final text message. "Made first campsite early. Setting up now. This place is like a postcard. Love you." The message included a photo of Twin Lakes, the water so clear it perfectly reflected the surrounding peaks. In the foreground, Kayla could be seen assembling their tent, her face split by a huge grin. Kayla's 6:45 p.m. call to Mike was equally upbeat. "Dad, you wouldn't believe how beautiful it is up here," she said. "Emma's documenting everything for her college portfolio, and I think I want to come back here with you sometime. We're being super safe, following all the protocols. The weather forecast still looks perfect for tomorrow." Both families went to bed that night, confident their daughters were having the adventure of their lives. The GPS tracker showed normal movement around the campsite as they prepared dinner, organized their gear for the next day, and settled in for the night. The last ping came at 11:47 p.m., showing both devices stationary at the planned location. June 11th should have brought the expected 8 a.m. check-in call. When it didn't come, neither family was immediately concerned. Cell service in the San Juans was notoriously spotty, and the girls might have simply started hiking early to take advantage of cool morning temperatures. But the GPS tracker told a different story. At 7:30 a.m., both devices showed movement away from Twin Lakes, following their planned route toward the second day's destination at Columbine Pass. The tracking continued normally until 10:15 a.m., when both signals stopped moving at a remote waypoint 8 miles from the trailhead and 12 miles from their starting campsite. Carlos Martinez first noticed the problem when he checked the tracking app during his lunch break. 2 stationary dots on the digital map, no movement for over 2 hours. He tried calling Emma's phone and got an immediate voicemail response, indicating the device was either turned off or outside cell range. A text message to the satellite communicator went unanswered. By 2 p.m., when the dots still hadn't moved and multiple attempts at communication had failed, both fathers were driving toward the mountains. The 3-hour drive from Denver felt like the longest journey of their lives, filled with increasingly frantic attempts to reach their daughters and growing certainty that something was terribly wrong. They reached the Needles trailhead at 5:30 p.m. to find the girls' Honda CR-V exactly where they'd left it, locked and undisturbed. No signs of break-in, no indication that anyone had returned to the vehicle. The parking area was nearly empty, Typical for a Monday evening in early June, Mike Thompson, drawing on 20 years of emergency response experience, immediately contacted San Juan County Search and Rescue. The initial report was filed at 6:15 p.m., officially classifying Emma Martinez and Kayla Thompson as missing persons. By nightfall, the first search teams were being organized, equipment checked, and rescue plans developed for a dawn deployment. Neither father slept that night. They stayed at a motel in the nearby town of Silverton, taking turns walking the parking lot and checking their phones for any sign of communication. The GPS tracker continued to show 2 stationary dots at coordinates that meant nothing to them, but everything to the search teams preparing to risk their own lives to find their daughters. At first light on June 12th, as search and rescue teams prepared to hike 8 miles into the wilderness to investigate the GPS coordinates, Carlos Martinez and Mike Thompson could only wait and hope. They had no way of knowing that their daughters had made a decision the previous morning that would keep them hidden from the Meyersroth, largest search operation in Colorado history for the next 5 years. The GPS coordinates led search and rescue teams deep into terrain that challenged even experienced wilderness rescuers. 8 miles from the trailhead, following increasingly faint trails through dense forest and across unstable scree fields, the rescue team finally reached the location where Emma and Kayla's tracking devices had gone silent. What they found defied explanation and would haunt investigators for years to come. The campsite was pristine, almost disturbingly normal. A 2-person tent was properly set up near a small stream, guy lines taut and rainfly secure. The camp was organized exactly as experienced backpackers would arrange it. Bear canisters properly stored 50 yards from the sleeping area, water filtration equipment laid out to dry, hiking boots placed neatly outside the tent. But the scene was wrong in ways that immediately set off alarms for the search team. Both GPS tracking devices sat side by side on a flat rock near the cold fire pit, deliberately turned off. The satellite communicators were nearby, also deactivated. Emma's camera was missing. Kayla's phone was gone. And most disturbing of all, both backpacks remained at the site, packed and ready for travel, but abandoned. Inside the tent, investigators found sleeping bags rolled and stowed, clothing organized in stuff sacks, and personal items carefully arranged. 3 days' worth of food remained untouched in the bare canisters. Water bottles were full. First aid kits, emergency shelters, extra batteries, and backup equipment were all present and accounted for. The camp showed no signs of struggle, no evidence of hasty departure. The ground around the site was undisturbed, showing no scuff marks, scattered equipment, or signs of confrontation. There was no blood, no torn clothing, no indication of an animal attack. The fire pit contained only cold ashes, suggesting no fire had been lit for many hours, possibly since the previous evening. Search and rescue dogs were brought to the scene within hours of the discovery. The highly trained animals found clear scent trails leading to the campsite from the direction of the main trail, but no scent trails leading away. It was as if Emma Martinez and Kayla Thompson had simply vanished into thin air from their perfectly organized campsite. The discovery triggered the largest search operation in San Juan County history. Within 24 hours, over 300 volunteers had been mobilized from across Colorado and neighboring states. The Colorado National Guard provided helicopters equipped with thermal imaging technology. Technical rescue teams with high-angle rope skills prepared to search cliff areas and deep ravines, where the girls might have fallen. Search Commander Janet Riley, a 25-year veteran of Colorado search and rescue with over 200 successful rescues, had never encountered a scene like the abandoned campsite. In her experience, missing hikers left trails, dropped equipment, footprints, some indication of where they'd gone and why. The complete absence of any evidence pointing to the girls' fate was unprecedented. The search grid covered over 50 square miles of some of Colorado's most challenging terrain. Helicopter crews flew thermal imaging sweeps of inaccessible valleys and cliff faces. Ground teams rappelled into deep canyons and explored abandoned mine shafts. Swift water rescue specialists searched streams and waterfalls where the girls might have fallen while collecting water. Every day brought new theories and potential leads. Maybe they'd attempted an off-trail photography expedition to capture sunrise from a high peak. Maybe they'd tried to reach a hidden waterfall marked on Emma's topographical maps. Maybe they'd pursued wildlife sightings, following elk or mountain sheep into dangerous terrain. But every theory collapsed under investigation. Emma's careful planning and meticulous preparation made impulsive off-trail adventures unlikely. Kayla's cross-country training and athletic conditioning made accidental falls implausible. Their experience level and safety consciousness made most accident scenarios difficult to believe. The false leads began almost immediately, as they always do in high-profile missing person cases. A gas station attendant 30 miles away reported seeing 2 young women matching the girls' description on the morning they disappeared. The women had seemed distressed, he claimed, and had asked about bus schedules to Denver. Investigators spent 48 valuable hours tracking down this lead, interviewing witnesses, reviewing security footage, and following potential escape routes. The theory collapsed when security video revealed the women were different individuals entirely. Tourists from out of state who bore only superficial resemblance to Emma and Kayla. Social media spawned more dangerous theories. Online forums suggested the girls had staged their own disappearance, seeking attention or trying to escape family pressure about college. Anonymous tipsters claimed to have seen them in Denver, Las Vegas, even Mexico, living under assumed names and laughing about fooling their families. Each false lead diverted resources from legitimate search efforts and inflicted additional emotional torture on the families. Carlos Martinez and Mike Thompson found themselves defending their daughters' character and mental health to investigators who had to pursue every possibility, no matter how far-fetched. The FBI joined the investigation when human trafficking theories emerged from anonymous tips. Special agents interviewed known offenders throughout the region, analyzed social media accounts for signs of predatory contact, and investigated the possibility that the girls had been targeted and abducted from their campsite. But forensic analysis of the scene revealed no evidence of outside interference. No foreign DNA, no foreign fingerprints, no signs of additional people at the campsite. The girls' careful organization of their equipment and the deliberate deactivation of their tracking devices suggested they had made conscious decisions, not been forced to act under duress. 2 weeks into the search, early snow began falling on the high peaks, making helicopter operations dangerous and closing access routes the ground teams needed to reach remote areas. The official search operation was suspended on June 25, 2018, after logging over 1,200 volunteer hours and expending $2.3 million in resources. The case was transferred to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation's Cold Case Unit. Emma Martinez and Kayla Thompson joined the ranks of Colorado's unsolved disappearances. Their smiling graduation photos filed alongside dozens of others who had walked into the wilderness and simply vanished. For Carlos Martinez and Mike Thompson, the suspension of active searching felt like a death sentence for hope. But neither man was prepared to give up. They organized private search efforts, hiring experienced trackers and wilderness guides to explore areas the official search might have missed. They learned to read topographical maps, studied weather patterns, and spent their savings on equipment and supplies for weekend searches that invariably ended in disappointment. If this mystery has you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe, because the breakthrough that finally solved this case came from technology nobody expected and revealed a truth more incredible than anyone imagined. The first year after Emma and Kayla's disappearance passed like a nightmare that never ended. Carlos Martinez closed his restaurant for 3 months, leaving his wife Maria to run the business while he spent every weekend hiking through the San Juan Mountains. He learned the names of every peak, every valley, every trail within 50 miles of where his daughter was last seen. Maria Martinez watched her husband disappear into his obsession while she fought her own battle against crushing depression. Emma's bedroom remained exactly as she'd left it. College acceptance letters still pinned to the bulletin board above her desk. Hiking boots still sitting by the door where she'd placed them while packing for the trip. The silence in their house was deafening, broken only by the sound of Carlos studying topographical maps late into the night, marking new areas to search with methodical precision. The Martinez family savings, built over decades of 18-hour restaurant days, hemorrhaged away on private investigators, tracking dogs, helicopter rentals, and equipment for search volunteers. Extended family members tried to intervene, suggesting that Carlos and Maria needed to accept reality and begin the process of healing. But how do you heal from a wound that never stops bleeding? 15 miles across Denver, Mike Thompson was fighting his own war against despair. As a firefighter, he was trained to run toward danger, to solve problems, to save people. The complete helplessness of his situation was slowly driving him insane. He took a leave of absence from the Denver Fire Department and converted his garage into a command center that looked like something from a detective movie. The walls were covered with maps, photographs, timeline charts, and evidence logs. Mike had studied every missing person case in Colorado history, looking for patterns, connections, anything that might provide a clue about what had happened to Kayla. He organized weekly volunteer searches, coordinating with local hiking clubs and search and rescue groups to systematically cover areas that might have been missed in the original operation. Kayla's room became a shrine that Mike couldn't bear to enter, but refused to let anyone clean. Her track trophies gathered dust on the shelves, her University of Colorado acceptance letter still taped to her mirror. The Fire Department Brotherhood provided emotional support and practical help, but nothing could fill the hole left by his daughter's absence. Both men aged decades in months. Carlos's thick black hair went gray, and he lost 40 pounds from stress and poor eating. Mike developed insomnia that left him gaunt and hollow-eyed, surviving on coffee and determination. Their wives and remaining family members watched helplessly as grief consumed the two men who had always been the strong ones, the problem solvers, the protectors. The community response was overwhelming initially, then gradually faded as months passed without new developments. The high school held memorial services and established scholarship funds in Emma and Kayla's names. Local hiking groups implemented new safety protocols and organized annual remembrance hikes. But as seasons changed and life moved forward for everyone else, the families were left alone with their questions and their pain. Online conspiracy theorists made everything worse. Forums dedicated to missing person cases attracted amateur detectives who proposed increasingly bizarre theories: alien abduction, government cover-ups, witness protection programs, voluntary disappearance to avoid family pressure. Every theory was more insulting than the last, suggesting that either the girls were still alive and choosing not to contact their families, or that their families were somehow involved in their disappearance. The second year brought a cruel milestone: Emma and Kayla's high school graduation ceremony. Their names were read during the memorial portion of the program, their diplomas accepted by their families in a ceremony that left few dry eyes in the auditorium. Their classmates went on to college while their empty dorm rooms waited in Boulder and Fort Collins, eventually assigned to other students when it became clear they wouldn't be coming home. The third year marked another devastating milestone: the first graduation of Kayla's University of Colorado cross-country teammates. The girls who should have been running alongside her dedicated their season to her memory, wearing small patches with her photo during competitions. Emma's classmates in Colorado State's environmental science program organized research projects in her honor, studying high-altitude ecosystem changes in the San Juan Mountains, where she was last seen. By the fourth year, the case files had grown cold in every sense of the word. New missing person cases demanded attention from law enforcement resources. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation's Cold Case Unit had dozens of unsolved disappearances, competing for investigator time and budget allocations. Without new evidence or credible leads, Emma and Kayla's case gradually moved from active investigation to archival status. But Carlos Martinez and Mike Thompson refused to give up. They had formed an unlikely partnership, forged by shared grief and stubborn determination. Every month, they organized searches in areas their daughters had never been known to visit, following theories developed from their obsessive study of the case files. They interviewed every hiker, every park ranger, every local resident who might have seen something unusual in the summer of 2018. The emotional toll on both families was devastating. The Martinez marriage survived, but was forever changed, with Carlos and Maria learning to navigate conversations that avoided certain topics and to find meaning in small moments of connection. Mike Thompson's relationship with his extended family became strained as they urged him to seek counseling, to move forward, to consider that his daughter might be gone forever. 5 years. 5 summers when the wildflowers bloomed in the high meadows where Emma had planned to take photographs. 5 winters when snow covered any remaining evidence of their passing. 5 years of birthday cakes with empty chairs, of Christmas presents bought but never given, of phone calls that would never come. The disappearance of Emma Martinez and Kayla Thompson had become part of Colorado folklore, whispered about around campfires and discussed in online forums dedicated to unsolved mysteries. Their smiling faces appeared on missing person websites and cold case documentaries. But for their families, they weren't statistics or unsolved mysteries. They were daughters who should have been graduating from college, starting careers, maybe getting married, and having children of their own. Neither Carlos Martinez nor Mike Thompson could have imagined that their daughters were alive, thriving, and less than 50 miles away from where they conducted their weekend searches. The truth was more incredible than any theory proposed by amateur detectives or professional investigators. And it would take advanced technology and pure chance to finally crack the case wide open. July 15, 2023. Dawned clear and cool in the San Juan Mountains. Perfect weather for the Colorado parks and wildlife research mission that would finally solve the mystery of Emma Martinez and Kayla Thompson. Dr. Rebecca Chun, a wildlife biologist with 15 years of experience studying elk migration patterns, had no idea that her routine research flight would make history. Dr. Chun led a team of graduate students conducting a comprehensive study of elk herd movements in response to climate change. Rising temperatures were pushing the animals into higher elevations earlier in the season, disrupting traditional migration routes that had remained stable for decades. The research, funded by a federal grant, used advanced thermal imaging drones to track herd movements across terrain too dangerous for ground-based observation. Graduate student David Kumar had been piloting drones for 3 years, first as a hobbyist, then as part of his wildlife biology doctoral program. The equipment he operated represented the cutting edge of civilian thermal imaging technology, capable of detecting heat signatures from altitudes that wouldn't disturb wildlife behavior. What made this particular mission significant was the terrain they were covering, remote valleys in the San Juan wilderness that had never been systematically surveyed. The flight plan covered a 30-square-mile area that included some of the most inaccessible terrain in Colorado. Deep valleys separated by near-vertical cliff faces, areas where helicopters couldn't safely operate and where ground teams would require multiple days just to reach base camp. Perfect habitat for elk seeking to escape summer heat and human disturbance, but also perfect terrain for hiding secrets. At 10:30 a.m., Kumar launched the drone from a staging area 15 miles from where Emma and Kayla had last been seen. The aircraft climbed to 2,000 feet above ground level and began its systematic survey pattern, thermal imaging sensors scanning for elk heat signatures, while standard cameras documented the landscape for later analysis. The first 2 hours of flight revealed exactly what the research team expected: scattered elk herds moving through high alpine meadows, family groups with calves seeking shade and water during the warming afternoon, bulls beginning to establish territories for the approaching rutting season. Dr. Chun monitored the data feed, making notes about herd sizes and movement patterns that would contribute to their climate change research. At 12:47 p.m., the thermal imaging sensors detected something unusual. In a valley so remote that it didn't appear on most hiking maps, the heat sensors registered multiple signatures that didn't match elk behavioral patterns. The signatures were human-sized, stationary for extended periods, and arranged in patterns that suggested organized activity rather than random animal movement. Kumar initially dismissed the readings as equipment malfunction. The valley was at least 12 miles from the nearest established trail, accessible only by technical climbing routes that would challenge experienced mountaineers. The idea that humans could be living in such a remote location seemed impossible. But the thermal signatures persisted, and the patterns became more distinct as the drone circled for multiple passes. Dr. Chun studied the data with growing puzzlement. The heat signatures definitely indicated human presence, but the location made no sense. No hiking permits had been issued for that area in years. No wilderness cabins or research stations existed within 50 miles. And the patterns suggested not just human presence, but organized human activity. Multiple heat sources arranged around what appeared to be constructed shelters, evidence of water collection systems, and signs of agricultural activity. The team made a decision that would change everything. Kumar redirected the drone for closer investigation, bringing it down to 500 feet above the valley floor while maintaining a flight pattern that wouldn't alert anyone below to their presence. What the high-resolution cameras revealed was extraordinary. A sophisticated survival compound that had been invisible from ground level and aircraft flying at normal altitudes. The structures were masterfully camouflaged using natural materials and techniques that made them nearly undetectable from above. What appeared to be natural rock formations were revealed as carefully constructed shelters. What looked like natural vegetation patterns were organized gardens and food production areas. The entire compound was designed to be invisible to aerial observation, a level of concealment that spoke to years of careful development. But it was the thermal imaging that provided the proof Dr. Chun needed to contact authorities. The heat signatures were unquestionably human, showing the distinctive patterns of body temperature, movement, and activity that could only come from people who had been living in the location for extended periods. The thermal data suggested at least 2 individuals, healthy and active, going about daily routines that indicated long-term habitation. Dr. Chun's first call was to Park Ranger, Captain Steve Morrison, a 20-year veteran who had participated in the original search for Emma and Kayla 5 years earlier. Morrison listened with growing amazement as Dr. Chen described the thermal imaging data and the photographic evidence of human habitation in one of the most remote locations in Colorado. Morrison's second question, after asking for the GPS coordinates, was whether Dr. Chen thought this could be related to the famous missing hikers case. The timing was right. 5 years was long enough for people to establish the kind of sophisticated survival compound the drone had discovered. The location, while far from where the girls were last seen, was within the range that experienced hikers might reach if they were trying to disappear completely. Within 6 hours of Dr. Chun's discovery, a response team was being organized. Technical rescue specialists, wilderness medical personnel, helicopter pilots, and investigators were briefed on the situation. The operation would require careful planning. If Emma Martinez and Kayla Thompson were somehow still alive after 5 years in the wilderness, the approach would need to be handled with extreme sensitivity. The families were contacted that evening. Carlos Martinez was at his restaurant when his phone rang. Mike Thompson was at the fire station, finishing a 24-hour shift. Both men had received hundreds of false leads over the years, and their initial reaction was cautious skepticism. But when they were shown the thermal imaging data and the photographic evidence of the hidden compound, hope began to bloom in their hearts for the first time in years. The discovery raised as many questions as it answered. If Emma and Kayla were alive and had been living in the wilderness for 5 years, why hadn't they tried to contact their families? What had caused them to disappear so completely that the largest search operation in Colorado history had found no trace of them? And how had 2 teenage girls not only survived in one of North America's most challenging environments, but actually thrived enough to build a permanent settlement? The answers to those questions would have to wait until morning, when a technical rescue team would rappel into the hidden valley to investigate the most extraordinary survival story in Colorado history. If this incredible discovery has you amazed, hit that subscribe button, because what the rescue team found when they reached that hidden compound was beyond anything they could have imagined. Dawn on July 16, 2023, brought perfect weather for the most unusual rescue mission in Colorado's search and rescue history. The technical team assembled at first light included wilderness medical specialists, high-angle rope rescue experts, and investigators prepared for scenarios ranging from recovery of remains to potentially the most remarkable survival story ever documented in North American wilderness. The descent into the hidden valley required 4 hours of technical rappelling down near vertical cliff faces, following routes that would challenge experienced mountaineers. The team carried specialized equipment for every possibility: medical supplies for severe malnutrition and exposure injuries, emergency shelter systems in case weather turned dangerous, and communication equipment to coordinate with helicopters that couldn't safely operate in the confined valley. Team leader Sarah Chen, no relation to the wildlife biologist who had made the discovery, was a 15-year veteran of technical rescue operations who had participated in rescues from Alaska to Mexico. But as the team reached the valley floor and began approaching the coordinates provided by the thermal imaging drone, she knew this mission was unlike anything in her experience. The camouflage was extraordinary. What the drone cameras had revealed from above was even more sophisticated when observed at ground level. The entire compound blended seamlessly with the natural landscape, using techniques that suggested years of careful development and an intimate understanding of wilderness survival principles. The main shelter appeared to be built into a natural rock formation, with walls that were indistinguishable from the surrounding cliff face. The roof was covered with carefully arranged stones and living vegetation that would be invisible to aerial observation. Water collection systems using natural materials channeled seasonal runoff into concealed storage areas. Gardens were arranged to look like natural meadow areas unless examined closely. As the rescue team approached, they could see evidence of recent activity: wisps of smoke from a carefully concealed fire, drying racks with what appeared to be preserved meat, and movement within the main shelter. The thermal imaging had been accurate. People were definitely living here, and they appeared to be in good health based on their activity levels. Sarah Chun made the decision to announce their presence rather than risk startling inhabitants who might have weapons or might panic at the sight of strangers. Colorado Search and Rescue. She called out, her voice echoing off the valley walls. "We're here to help." The response was immediate and electrifying. Two figures emerged from the main shelter, moving cautiously but showing no signs of fear or distress. As they stepped into the morning sunlight, Sarah Chun felt her breath catch in her throat. Even after 5 years of wilderness living, even weathered and changed by their ordeal, the faces were unmistakable. Emma Martinez and Kayla Thompson were alive. They looked like people who had been forged by the wilderness into something harder and more capable than the teenage girls who had vanished 5 years earlier. Both were lean and muscled, their skin weathered to a deep bronze by years of high-altitude sun and wind. Their hair was long and practical, braided back from faces that showed the kind of competence that comes from surviving challenges most people never face. Emma stepped forward first, her movements cautious but confident. At 22, she looked like a wilderness expert decades older, someone who could read weather patterns in cloud formations and find water in seemingly barren terrain. "You found us," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of relief and disbelief. "We never thought anyone would find us here." Kayla moved beside her best friend, still displaying the athletic grace that had made her a cross-country champion, but now refined by years of navigating dangerous mountain terrain. "How many people know we're here?" she asked immediately, her eyes scanning the sky as if expecting helicopters or media attention. The questions came in a rush from the rescue team. "Are you injured? Are you sick? How long have you been here?" But Sarah Chun recognized the look in their eyes. These weren't victims waiting to be rescued. These were survivors who had made a conscious choice to stay hidden, and they were afraid of what would happen if the world discovered their location. "We need to know you're safe first," Sarah said carefully. "Your families have been looking for you for 5 years. They never stopped hoping you were alive." Emma's composure cracked at the mention of her parents. Tears ran down her weathered cheeks as she asked about her father's restaurant, her mother's health, whether they had given up hope. Kayla wanted to know about her father, whether he was still with the fire department, whether he had remarried, whether he thought she was dead. The medical assessment revealed something extraordinary. Both young women were in excellent physical condition, arguably better health than when they had disappeared. They showed no signs of malnutrition, no evidence of serious injury or illness. Their teeth were clean and well-maintained. Their hair was healthy. They moved with the confidence of people completely adapted to their environment. But it was the tour of their compound that truly amazed the rescue team. Over 5 years, Emma and Kayla had built something that approached a permanent settlement. The main shelter was a sophisticated structure that stayed warm in winter and cool in summer, with multiple rooms carved into the rock face and reinforced with carefully fitted stones. Their water system was ingenious, using gravity-fed pipes made from hollowed wood to channel spring water into storage basins carved from natural rock formations. They had developed multiple backup systems for water collection, including tarps that could be deployed to catch rainwater and snow-melting systems for winter survival. The food production areas showed years of careful development. They had identified and cultivated edible wild plants, creating garden areas that looked natural but were actually organized agricultural plots. They had learned to preserve meat through smoking and drying, had developed techniques for making flour from wild seeds, and had even learned to make primitive pottery for food storage. Their tool-making abilities were equally impressive. They had progressed from using found objects to forging metal tools using techniques learned through trial and error. They had spinning wheels made from scavenged materials to make thread from plant fibers. They had looms for weaving cloth. They had developed a complete technological base for wilderness survival. But perhaps most impressive were the detailed journals they had kept, documenting 5 years of learning, experimentation, and gradual mastery of survival skills. Emma's scientific training had been crucial for identifying safe foods and understanding weather patterns. Kayla's athletic conditioning had enabled the physical work of construction and hunting. "The first winter almost killed us," Emma admitted as she showed the rescue team their insulated sleeping areas. "We didn't know enough about food preservation, about staying warm, about conserving energy. We lost probably 30 pounds each and came close to starving before we learned to hunt and trap successfully. The second year was when we started to think we might actually survive long term," Kayla added. "We figured out water storage, food preservation, how to make clothes and tools. By the third year, we weren't just surviving anymore. We were actually living. But the question that haunted everyone was why. Why had two intelligent, capable young women chosen to disappear so completely that the largest search operation in Colorado history couldn't find them? Why had they allowed their families to suffer 5 years of agonizing uncertainty? What could possibly have driven them to such desperate measures? The answer would challenge everything the rescue team thought they knew about survival, justice, and the lengths people will go to protect themselves from unimaginable danger. The explanation came slowly, reluctantly, as Emma and Kayla struggled to find words for experiences that had shaped 5 years of their lives. They sat around the rescue team's emergency stove, sharing the first coffee they had tasted since their disappearance, trying to make sense of decisions that had seemed so clear at 17 but felt almost impossible to explain at 22. "We need to start at the beginning," Emma said finally, her hands wrapped around the warm metal cup as if anchoring herself to reality. The morning of June 11th, 2018, we broke camp at Twin Lakes early, maybe 6:30 a.m. The weather was perfect, we were making good time, and we decided to take a detour. Kayla picked up the story. There was this waterfall marked on Emma's topographical maps, maybe half a mile off our planned route. We'd heard it was spectacular for photography, and we figured we had plenty of time to check it out and still make our next campsite before dark. The detour had seemed innocent enough. An experienced photographer and an athletic cross-country runner taking a short side trip to capture images of a remote waterfall. They had done similar detours dozens of times on previous hiking trips, always returning safely to their planned routes. But this time, the detour led them into a nightmare that would change their lives forever. "The waterfall was everything we'd hoped," Emma continued, her voice growing quiet. "Spectacular, completely isolated, perfect for photography. I must have taken 200 photos. We spent maybe 2 hours there, just enjoying the place, feeling like we had discovered our own secret paradise." They were preparing to return to the main trail when they heard voices in the forest below their position. At first, they were curious rather than concerned. Meeting other hikers in remote areas was always interesting, a chance to share trail information and compare notes about conditions and weather. We started hiking down toward the voices, thinking we'd say hello, Kayla said. But something about the conversation made us stop and listen. Instead of announcing ourselves, what they overheard was a heated argument between several men about money, territories, and what sounded like business arrangements. The conversation included references to quantities, prices, and distribution networks that made no sense in the context of legitimate wilderness activities. At first, we thought maybe they were poachers, Emma explained. Illegal hunting, maybe selling elk meat or bear parts. We'd heard stories about that kind of thing happening in remote areas, but as they listened from concealment above the group, it became clear that the men were discussing something far more serious than wildlife poaching. They were coordinating the transportation and distribution of large quantities of illegal drugs, using the remote wilderness area as a staging ground for operations that extended across multiple states. There were maybe 6 or 7 guys, Kayla said. They had TVs hidden in the trees, communication equipment, weapons. This wasn't some casual operation. These were serious criminals using our national forests as their base of operations. The girls realized they had stumbled onto something dangerous, but their first instinct was to quietly retreat and report what they had seen to authorities when they returned from their hiking trip. They began carefully backing away from their observation position, planning to circle around the group and return to the main trail without being detected. That's when everything went wrong. I stepped on a loose rock, Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. It rolled down the slope and crashed into the trees below us. The noise echoed through the whole valley. The reaction from the men below was immediate and terrifying. The conversation stopped instantly, replaced by commands to spread out and search for whoever was spying on them. The girls could hear people moving through the forest, calling to each other, coordinating a search pattern. Emma and Kayla ran. Drawing on Kayla's cross-country conditioning and Emma's knowledge of the terrain, they fled through dense forest, trying to reach the main trail where they hoped to encounter other hikers or possibly park rangers. But the men pursuing them had vehicles, radios, and superior knowledge of the local area. They chased us for hours, Kayla said. Every time we thought we had lost them, we'd hear TVs or voices in the distance. They had split up into teams and were trying to surround us. The chase continued through the afternoon and into the evening. The girls had no food, limited water, and no camping equipment, having left everything of their campsite when they embarked on what should have been a short photography detour. As darkness fell, they were exhausted, dehydrated, and completely lost in terrain they didn't recognize. We finally lost them sometime after midnight, Emma said. But we could still hear TVs in the distance, still searching. We realized that these people weren't just going to give up and go home. They couldn't afford to let us report what we had seen, hiding in a rocky outcrop that provided shelter from the wind and concealment from searchers. The girls made a decision that would define the next 5 years of their lives. They could try to make their way back to civilization and report the drug operation to authorities, risking that the criminals would find them first. Or they could disappear so completely that no one, including their pursuers, would ever find them. We knew that if we went back, if we reported what we had seen, these people would eventually find us, Kayla explained. They had seen us. They knew we were witnesses, and they had the resources to track us down no matter where we went. The decision to disappear wasn't made lightly or quickly. They spent 3 days hiding in various locations, observing the continued search efforts, listening to radio communications that made it clear the drug operation was extensive and well-organized. The men searching for them spoke casually about violence, about people who had disappeared permanently for interfering with their operations. On the 3rd day, we saw them find our campsite, Emma said, her voice breaking slightly. We watched from a ridge almost a mile away as they went through our equipment, looking for identification, trying to figure out who we were and where we came from. That's when they realized the true scope of their predicament. If they returned home, the criminals would eventually identify them through their abandoned equipment and personal belongings. Their families would become targets. Their friends would be at risk. Everyone they cared about would be in danger simply by association with witnesses to a major criminal operation. So we made the hardest decision of our lives, Kayla said. We decided to disappear completely, to let everyone think we were dead rather than put our families in danger. The transformation, from lost hikers to wilderness survivors, had been brutal. They had no equipment, limited knowledge of edible plants, and no experience with the advanced survival skills they would need to stay alive through a Colorado winter. The first year was a nightmare of near starvation, exposure, and constant danger. "We made every mistake you can imagine," Emma admitted. Food poisoning from plants we misidentified, hypothermia from inadequate shelter, injuries from falls, and cuts that got infected. "We probably came within hours of dying at least a dozen times that first winter. But gradually, through trial and error, through careful observation of wildlife behavior, through Emma's scientific training and Kayla's physical conditioning, they learned to not just survive, but to thrive in one of North America's most challenging environments." By the second year, we weren't just staying alive anymore, Kayla said. We were actually building a life. Learning skills our ancestors knew, but that we'd never needed in the modern world. They had created a sustainable existence in complete isolation, developing technologies and techniques that allowed them to live comfortably in conditions that would kill most people. But the cost had been enormous. 5 years of separation from everyone they loved. 5 years of wondering whether their families were safe. 5 years of guilt over the pain their disappearance had caused. "Every day, we wondered if we had made the right choice," Emma said. "Every day we thought about trying to contact our families, to let them know we were alive. But we also knew that the people who chased us were still out there, still dangerous, and still capable of hurting anyone connected to us." The rescue team listened in stunned silence as the truth of Emma and Kayla's disappearance became clear. These weren't victims of an accident or a crime. They were witnesses who had made an impossible choice, sacrificed their own lives and their families' peace of mind to protect everyone they loved from criminals who would stop at nothing to silence them. But the story wasn't over. The drug operation that had forced 2 teenage girls to fake their own deaths was still operating, still using Colorado's wilderness as a base for illegal activities. And now, 5 years later, Emma and Kayla were finally ready to help authorities shut it down permanently. The decision to return to civilization wasn't made lightly. Emma and Kayla had spent 5 years building a life that, while isolated and difficult, was entirely their own. They had achieved something remarkable: complete self-sufficiency in one of the world's most challenging environments. But the cost of their survival had been the destruction of their families' lives, and the knowledge that dangerous criminals continued to operate in Colorado's wilderness. "We can't keep hiding forever," Emma said, as the rescue team prepared to evacuate them from the hidden valley. "Our families deserve to know we're alive, and the people who forced us to disappear deserve to face justice." The extraction from their wilderness compound required 2 days of careful planning and execution. Everything they had built over 5 years had to be documented for evidence and posterity. Their survival techniques, their tool-making innovations, their agricultural developments, all of it represented knowledge that could benefit future survival research and wilderness education programs. But more importantly, Emma and Kayla's detailed journals and photographic documentation could provide law enforcement with precise information about the drug operation they had witnessed 5 years earlier. Locations, descriptions of individuals, vehicle information, and operational procedures that might still be relevant to ongoing criminal investigations. The helicopter flight from the valley to Denver was the first time Emma and Kayla had been in an aircraft. The first time they had seen the outside world since their disappearance. The changes in the landscape below them, new development, altered terrain, evidence of climate change impacts served as a stark reminder of how much time had passed since they were 17-year-old high school graduates. The reunion with their families took place at Denver General Hospital, where both young women underwent comprehensive medical evaluations that confirmed what the rescue team had observed. 5 years of wilderness living had left them in remarkable physical condition, with no serious health problems and fitness levels that exceeded most people half their age. Carlos Martinez wept when he first saw his daughter, barely recognizing the confident, capable woman she had become. The slight teenager who had left for a graduation hiking trip had been transformed into someone who looked like she could survive anywhere, do anything, overcome any challenge. But when Emma hugged him, When she called him Papa in the voice he had missed for 5 years, she was still his little girl. Mike Thompson's reunion with Kayla was equally emotional. The cross-country runner he remembered had become something like a wilderness athlete, lean and powerful in ways that spoke to years of physical challenges most people never face. But her smile was the same, her laugh was the same, and when she told him about the survival skills she had learned, he recognized the problem-solving approach he had tried to teach her as a child. The media attention was overwhelming and had to be carefully managed. The story of 2 teenage girls surviving 5 years in complete wilderness isolation captured international attention. Survival experts wanted to study their techniques. Publishers wanted to buy their story. Documentary filmmakers wanted to chronicle their experience. But the first priority was justice. Emma and Kayla worked with federal investigators to provide detailed information about the drug operation they had witnessed. The 5-year gap created challenges: personnel change, operations move, evidence degrades, but some elements of their testimony proved invaluable to ongoing investigations. The remote valley where they had first encountered the criminal operation was thoroughly searched by federal agents and found to contain evidence of continued illegal activity. The site had been used intermittently over the years as a staging area for drug transportation, with hidden supply caches and communication equipment that supported Emma and Kayla's account of a sophisticated operation. Several arrests were made based on information the young women provided, though many of the original individuals they had seen were no longer active in the area. More importantly, their testimony helped authorities understand how criminal organizations use remote wilderness areas for illegal activities, leading to enhanced monitoring and patrol protocols in national forests across the region. The psychological evaluation of Emma and Kayla revealed something remarkable. 5 years of extreme isolation and survival challenges had not damaged their mental health, but had actually strengthened their resilience and problem-solving abilities. They showed no signs of post-traumatic stress, no indication of social anxiety or depression. If anything, their wilderness experience had given them confidence and capabilities that few people ever develop. We learned that we could survive anything. Kayla explained to the therapists evaluating their readiness to reintegrate into society. Not just physical survival, but emotional survival. We learned to depend on each other completely and to find joy and meaning even in the most difficult circumstances. Emma's scientific training had been enhanced by 5 years of practical application in real-world conditions. Her understanding of ecology, weather patterns, and environmental systems had been refined by daily experience. Several universities offered her research positions studying wilderness survival and adaptation techniques. Kayla's athletic abilities had been transformed by years of mountain living into capabilities that attracted attention from adventure sports sponsors and wilderness guide companies. Her combination of physical conditioning and survival expertise made her uniquely qualified for high-level wilderness instruction and expedition leadership. But perhaps most importantly, their story provided hope for families dealing with missing person cases. The knowledge that people could survive in conditions previously thought impossible, that determination and ingenuity could overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges, offered new possibilities for search and rescue operations. The Martinez and Thompson families established a foundation supporting wilderness survival education and advanced search technologies. The thermal imaging drones that had finally located Emma and Kayla were provided to search and rescue teams throughout Colorado, potentially saving lives in future emergency operations. Emma and Kayla's survival compound was preserved as a research site for studying long-term wilderness adaptation techniques. Their innovations in water collection, food preservation, tool-making, and shelter construction provided valuable information for survival research and emergency preparedness programs. 1 year after their rescue, Emma Martinez enrolled in Colorado State University's graduate program in environmental science, focusing on human adaptation to climate change impacts. Her thesis research examines how traditional survival skills might be relevant for communities facing environmental displacement. Kayla Thompson became a certified wilderness guide and survival instructor, teaching advanced skills to search and rescue volunteers, military personnel, and civilian adventure enthusiasts. Her training programs are based on techniques she and Emma developed during their 5 years of isolation. The friendship that sustained them through their ordeal remains as strong as ever. They live in apartments 3 blocks apart in Fort Collins, Colorado, close enough to the mountains for weekend hiking trips, but far enough from their former wilderness home to feel truly safe for the first time in years. Their story has been told in books, documentaries, and academic papers studying extreme survival psychology. But for Emma and Kayla, the most important outcome is simpler. They're alive. Their families are whole again, and they proved that human beings are capable of surviving and thriving in conditions that would seem impossible to most people. The criminals who forced 2 teenage girls to disappear into the wilderness for 5 years are serving federal prison sentences. The drug operation that operated in Colorado's remote valleys has been shut down permanently, and the thermal imaging technology that finally solved the case has been upgraded and deployed to search and rescue teams across the country. Emma Martinez and Kayla Thompson survived the unsurvivable, overcame the impossible, and proved that hope should never be abandoned, no matter how much time passes or how desperate the situation seems. Their story stands as testament to the power of friendship, the resilience of the human spirit, and the extraordinary things people can accomplish when they refuse to give up. If this incredible story of survival against impossible odds has amazed you, make sure to subscribe for more remarkable tales where advanced technology uncovers the truth behind the world's most baffling mysteries. Because sometimes the most unbelievable stories turn out to be the most inspiring ones of all.